Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with our educational series. My name is Kathy Whitaker, and I'm the director of the First Tennessee Area Agency on Aging and Disability. And I'm so excited that you all are participating in our 2021 State of Aging Virtual Education Series. Our program today is I thought I was a people person until I started working with people. So I'm very excited to hear the presentation, and I'd also like to thank Visiting Angels for sponsoring our program today. Kim Howe is with us. Kim is the marketing liaison with Visiting Angels. And Kim, do you have a few words for us today?
I do. Good morning. We are so excited to be the first sponsor for this series. Visiting Angels, as most of you might know, we are an in-home care serving here in the Tri-Cities. Our office is located in Gray, and we are here to perform the in-home non-medical services needed. We are a provider for the 10 Care Choices program, which we partner with the Area Agency on Aging and Disability. We also are providers for the VA Homemaker program, and we are a nationally known company, but we're locally owned and operated here. I think one of our big specialties at Visiting Angels is that we work on building relationships with families. So we're here to help families. I am here, the office is here. We offer free care consultations. So if we can ever be a service to anyone, please give us a call. We'd love to help you all. And we are so excited for this first virtual education series. And I'm very excited to hear our topic today, because we all know I thought I was a people person until I started working with people. Lisa, I'm very excited to hear your topic today.
Thank you, Kim. And we really appreciate the support of Visiting Angels. It's my pleasure to introduce Lisa Smartt. I've heard Lisa before, and I think I could hear Lisa all the time because she is very entertaining. She's a 51-year-old woman who loves to laugh. She lives on a 16 wooded acre on the outskirts of Dresden, Tennessee, with more than a wonderful husband of 26 years. She has 2 teenage sons, and she says that they sometimes like to fight, and a misguided cat, and his name is Hobo. She travels nationally as a motivational humorist and writes a weekly newspaper column entitled The Smartt View. Her future aspirations include organizing her purse, eating more green leafy vegetables, and cleaning out a hall closet that she has. So thank you, Lisa, for being with us and being our first speaker in our series today.
Thank you, Kathy. It is a pleasure to be with y'all. I'm getting an echo. Is that me? What is that, love? Hold on one second. Let me call my technical director. I'm hearing. No, now I'm not hearing it. Oh, thank you. I bet that Smart Day will fix that. I bet it was a problem on our end. It is. I say it's a joy to be with you, but not really, because I'm not really good at these online things. So if I do something really stupid, just forgive me. Now, the first thing y'all are noticing, because this is a big thing, I think, with Zoom things, is you're noticing the bookshelf behind me, because on the news programs, people are all about what the background is. And some of y'all are like, oh, Miss Lisa reads. I haven't read one of the books that are behind me. I'm in my husband's office because we live out in the middle of nowhere where internet is spotty, where the only thing we can get on TV is the Brady Bunch. So I just want you to know this was not me trying to look like a smart person being interviewed on a news show. The books that are behind me right now, I have not read one. And even if there were books from my college algebra class, I wouldn't have read that one either. So the truth is, this has just happened to be, I needed to be at his office in order to do this online presentation. It thrills me that this is supported by Visiting Angels, the first thing I thought of when they said that was visiting angels, quality choice in home care. See, I watch too much TV and don't read enough books, but I love their ad, and it is catchy. Whoever thought of that, it might have been Kim herself. We don't know. She might have called that in. It was a wonderful, catchy thing, and I appreciate so much what they do. Both of my parents lived to be in their 80s, and I understand how important it is to have all kinds of services provided. So it's a joy to be with you. Not really, because I really want to be with you in real life so I can kind of hug you and squeeze you. And I'm fully vaccinated, so I feel like I could squeeze you. But some of y'all are like, well, I'm glad that it's not in real life then, because I don't really want a big woman who's like a large Nordic woman who can play for the NFL to give me a big squeeze. And if that's your case, you're glad to be at home watching this. This is part 1. Part 2 is going to be in July. Also too, I have written books, and normally when people have written books, have y'all ever seen on the news where they have those books behind them to be advertising for themselves while they're speaking? My mama would come from heaven and snatch me bald-headed if I did that, because she would say self-promotion is the most godless of godless pursuits. So I'm not going to do that. I do have books. If you want to look them up, it's lisasmart.com. I'll tell you the hint, but I'm not going to advertise that while we go, because I think that's crazy. I want to start out by thanking each and every one of you who are in the people business, because it is a hard business to be in, but especially this year with the quarantine, and some of y'all weren't able to quarantine because people still had needs. You had to be out and doing, and you had to be careful. And then we were all under so much stress with all that. And I want to thank you. Thank you for every person who didn't say thank you. Thank you for every person who didn't know to write a note and tell you how much you changed their life. Thank you on behalf of them. So that's how I want to start. I'm not naive enough to think that I know more than y'all do. I always say, if we had to know who the smartest person in the room is, we probably would get it wrong. I'm definitely not the smartest person in the room. So I'm not here to teach you a bunch of things that I think you don't know. In fact, some of you are on this because you just needed to be on it. And the first thing you're thinking is, I don't know what she's going to teach me about people business. I'm telling you right now, I've been driving that Impala for 20 years. I've been all over this area helping people and doing, and you're right. I stand in awe of you. You are the expert. I'm just here because we have to have some kind of seminar, and I'm just here to hopefully, humbly walk alongside you, because most of us got our jobs because when we went into the interview, one of the first things we said is, I love people. I'm energized by people. I love people. I love to hug them in an appropriate way that's not illegal. I love to take care of them. I want to help people. And then about 3 or 4 weeks in, if you've had my experience, about 3 or 4 weeks in, you find yourself praying, Lord, help me not to commit a felony homicide today, because people, it was a lot bigger job than what most of us anticipated. Working with people is hard and it's difficult. And now we have all these seminars that make it so high-ended and high-minded. And today, I just want you to know that this is not that kind of seminar. It's not where I'm going to use big words to make you think that I know something you don't know. I always say I do Meemaw presentations. And you know how if you had a good Meemaw, she'd love you and kick you in the butt at the same time. Do you know what I'm talking about? And so I always say, I want to do Meemaw presentations. I'm going to love you, and I'm going to kick you in the butt while I'm kicking myself too in areas where we need to move forward. And that's only because I love you, and I'm that way too. And believe me, I thought I really was good with people. And then in my late 50s, because that was an old bio, I'm 57. For those of you that say, girl, she looked old for 51, I'm 57 and my kids are grown. But I will say, I always liked people. I was always real sweet to people. And then something bad happened to me in my late 50s. Some of y'all might be there, where I got kind of salty. And I started using terms like people nowadays, and I'm telling you, my filter is way less filtered than it used to be. And some of y'all might be able to relate to that. So I'm coming alongside you as a co-worker in the people business. I want to start. Some of y'all wonder, what are your big qualifications to talk on this seminar? I don't have any. I really don't. In fact, I have a great story. A gal from Texas called me one time and she said, Miss Smartt, we want you to come to Dallas and do this big women's gala. Every year we get somebody really smart and educated to be our keynote speaker, but this year we're going a completely different direction. So I'm the person they call when they're going a completely different direction. I am not highly educated. I am not an expert by any means. And incidentally, I'm going to give you some Meemaw wisdom. If somebody tells you I'm an expert in working with people, I just don't buy it. You might know a lot about working with people, but I don't think there are any experts at working with people, because all of us make mistakes and we all are in the process of learning. So that's the first thing, but that's not actually a principle. I want to talk a little bit about chickens first. I know some of y'all are like, I can't believe I'm getting educational hours for this. We live out in the middle of nowhere, like where I had to come to the university to my husband's office because our internet is bad. We live out in the middle of nowhere. And when our kids were young, they wanted to have chickens. And any of y'all that are rural people, if you end up with a little FFA kid or something like that, they always want chickens. And so our son was determined to have chickens, and he did. He got chickens, we got eggs, we probably lost $1,000 on the chickens, but we made $2 a dozen on those eggs. You know what I'm saying? Any of you parents out there, your kids had this wonderful scheme of how they were going to make money, and then you ended up losing about $1,200. No, I'm just joking. Okay, so our chickens were producing eggs, and everything was going well. But one day, they just went on strike. There was like 25 chickens, and they just stopped producing eggs. They just got done with it. And they were way too young to stop egg production. So I called my mama. My mama was raised on a farm, and she was also raised rural, but my mama has a master's degree, super smart lady, like literally the smartest person in the room, and has a lot of practical wisdom. So I called my mom and I said, Mama, we've got a problem. The chickens have gone on strike. They're not laying eggs. And she said, well, they're not happy about something. And I said, the chickens are unhappy. I mean, we feed them. How happy should a chicken be? I mean, should we put a TV down there? I mean, what are we not doing for our chickens? And my mama had some very valuable wisdom that, believe it or not, is valuable in working with people. She said, well, let me just tell you, Lisa, you're going to have to go down to that chicken pen, and you're going to have to sit there a while, and you're going to have to think about what is life like for these chickens. She said, you're going to have to put yourself in that position. She said, is it too dark where they are? Do they need fresher water? Do they need light? What's going on in the chicken's mind? Now, I've never been encouraged to think like a chicken, but I sure did. I went down there, and we realized there was some problems. Once I went down there and sat there, I realized they needed more light. They needed some music. And believe it or not, now some of you country people may not think this is true, but we put the radio down there, and I'm telling you, those chickens love Brad Paisley. Woo! Egg production just went right up. Now, what does that have to do with working with people? This is the point. Mama was right. I wanted the chickens to do better, but I hadn't taken any time to think about what the environment was like for them. What was going on down there? How could I really understand what they were going through? And you might say, well, that doesn't have anything. It has everything in the world to do with people. Because as most of y'all know, you have to understand what somebody's going through before you know how to meet their needs. Okay, so that takes us to Meemaw principle number 1 on I thought I was a people person until I started working with people, is this. If you think you're better than others, that's a sure sign you're not. Amen and hallelujah. If you think you're better than others, that's a sure sign you're not. Haughtiness and narcissism is something that my husband and I are in opposition to in our current culture, and we're fighting this. He teaches college students, And one of the things that we oppose and that we're constantly wanting to encourage them is life doesn't revolve around your belly button. If you think you're better than others, that is going to be actually an environment killer. And so the first thing that we do in the people business is we get humble and we realize, man, I'm telling you, there's nothing somebody's done that I don't have the potential to do. If you think you're better than others, it's a sure sign you're not. Now, I have a silly story, because that's really what I do. I love what, I think somebody actually wrote that. I'm kind of a storyteller. I'm not saying I'm a sage, wise person, but I do have a story that relates to principle 1. A woman from California called me one time, and I was out in the middle of nowhere where we live in my orange house coat at the time. And she said, Miss Smartt, I had done something in California. She said, I wasn't at your presentation, but I wanted to talk to you about a presentation in California that we're going to have. And she said, I hope you're not in the middle of a meeting. I said, oh no, do you want to know what I've been doing? And she said, sure. I said, well, every night our 2 Yahoo boys set a coon trap out in the driveway. They're trying to catch a raccoon or a possum, or what they really want to catch is a fox, but you can't catch a fox because they're really smart. I said, but they set that trap, and then the next morning they say, Mama, look, we got the fat raccoon. It was so funny, and they don't. I said, if we're hungry, we eat it, but no. I said, we really don't. They let it go. It's like a science experiment. They want to see what's coming through our driveway. But I said, this morning, those crazy boys, they left on that school bus and they left the trap open. It had not caught anything. And then about an hour ago, I heard this horrible noise. Now, she was just silent. I said, it was like, you could hear this scratching, horrible noise. So I went out there and they had caught our cat Hobo. And so I thought I could just lure that cat out with cat food because I couldn't get my big rear end in the trap. And so I was trying to lure that cat out with cat food. I could not get it. I tried to psychologically analyze the cat. And I'll tell you the truth. I'm no better cat psychologist than I was a chicken psychologist. And I could not get that cat out. And I said, finally, in a fit of rage, I held that cage over my head. I shook that thing and that cat ran for the woods. I said, ma'am, I don't know if we will ever see that cat again. So it has been quite a morning out here in rural Tennessee. Complete silence on the other end. That's when I realized I probably should have executed some professionalism. You know how country people are, they overshare. You know how like your Aunt Jolene who lived in the country and you said, how did it go at the urologist, Aunt Jolene? And then she told you, country people are traditional oversharers. It was silent on the other end. And then I'll never, as long as I live, forget what she said next. She said, Miss Smartt, we're planning a very high-end event. Do you speak at a lot of high-end events? That's when I was glad I had a good mom and daddy, because I said the first thing that came to my mind. I said, ma'am, I'm 6 feet tall. No one's end is higher than mine. I will have the highest end there. If you get a big place in LA and you put 1,000 people in there and you put an ice sculpture in the middle, I bet my end will be higher than most everybody in the audience. And she started laughing. My husband's laughing over there. After 33 years, he still thinks I'm funny. Oh, that's so cute. Okay. So anyway, I told her, I said, no, I would have the highest end there. She started laughing. I knew I lost the jobs, but even though I knew I lost the job, which incidentally I ended up getting, I felt like my granny was saying, Lisa, use this as a time to educate this poor woman about raccoon traps. So I said, ma'am, are you in a rush? I said, do you have a minute for me just to share one thing with you? And she said, no, I'm not in a rush. And so I said, I want to tell you something. I said, when my husband was a graduate student in Bryan College Station, we lived in a trailer park. And I don't mean a mobile home community where your meemaw lives in Florida and they have flowers out. I'm talking about a trailer park with broken glass, lots of police. When our kids would go to bed at night, they'd say, Mama, look, Jimmy's going with the police again. You know, I mean, just crime, lots of difficulties, broken glass, lots of poverty. We lived in a wonderful community. We loved it. We lived there 6 years. It was great. And I said, if I were to go to that trailer park tonight and gather everybody together, you would find that they have 4 predominant problems. Problems with personal relationships, problems with rebellious family members. Some of y'all have to deal with this. Problems with addictions of every kind, and financial problems. And I want to be really clear. If I got on a plane and came to LA and did your event, the people in your audience are going to have 4 predominant problems. Problems with personal relationships, problems with rebellious family members, addictions, and financial problems. There is nothing new under the sun. And as some of y'all know, no family is exempt from having your kid on the front page of the paper. And I'm not talking about as the valedictorian. If you think your family is exempt from those embarrassments, or from an older member of your family who ends up getting very unhappy and does a bunch of things that are not kosher or whatever we would consider to be appropriate, no family is exempt from that. And that's why on principle number 1, I want to talk about a question that I want you to eliminate from your vocabulary. And I want you to, when you do training for people, I want you to help them. I don't know why this is making me cry. I'm thinking about my mom and daddy. They were really good at this. Boy, if we ever acted like we were better somebody, they would have wore us out back when you wore kids out. Some of y'all old people know what I mean. But you're going to help train your people that there's going to be one question, one phrase that we're never going to use as long as you work in this organization. And if you have kids at home, I want you to go home and I want you to teach your kids that around this dinner table in this home, there's one question that we're just never going to use. And if we hear you use this phrase, we're going to send you to your room or do whatever discipline we do. And that phrase is, how could anybody fill in the blank? How could anybody become a drug addict? How could anybody weigh 1,000 pounds? Do you want me to, when you're watching the Today Show and they show this person who weighs 900 pounds and they had to remove a wall, and you say, how could anybody weigh 900 pounds? Can I tell you that I would have been that person? That had I not had the help I've had along the way with my food issues? Because see, here's what happens with the 900-pound man. He never thought he'd weigh 300, and then when he did, he was discouraged. He never thought he'd weigh 350. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's not sin. For those of you that are followers of God, I'm saying that I understand how it happens. An explanation doesn't mean an excuse. Just because there's an explanation, I'm not excusing inappropriate behavior. But I am saying that we must never, under any circumstance, use the term, how could anybody? Really? You don't know how somebody could be a drug addict? Then I hope you don't have to have a really bad surgery. I love it. I had a terrible car wreck. I'll tell you a little bit about it later, but I had a terrible car wreck and I was in the hospital for a week, and on the way home the next day, you got to understand, my husband comes from an Appalachian outdoor bathroom, moonshining, addicted family, and or had a lot of people with addictions. And on the way home from the hospital, he said, Lisa, tomorrow I'm taking you off the narcs, as he would say. And I loved what he said next. And I hope that you can see this talking about drug addiction or any kind of addiction. He said, I'm taking you off the narcs tomorrow, not because you're a bad person, but because you're a person. Is that what you believe about drug addiction? that it happens to people, and that means it could be in your family. And so principle number one, if you think you're better than others, that's a sure sign you're not. And the way we reflect that is by never using the term, how could anybody? We don't understand the discouragement and difficulty they're going through. It doesn't mean we excuse it, because we're going to love them enough to tell them the truth. Amen. You know what I told my life group? I meet with a group, Philip and I teach a life group at our church, and I said, if you see me going in the donut shop, you pull your car over and say, Miss Lisa, what are you doing? You said you don't need to be in the donut shop because you have a food problem, and you got to love me enough to tell me the truth. Don't let me just walk in there. So I'm not talking about excusing things. I'm talking about putting your arm around somebody. Okay, number two. Oh, we're just tootling right along here. Yeah. Oh, and I know some of y'all are like, oh, I hate online seminars. Well, some of y'all are in your pajama pants, so you need to celebrate that you're in a situation. One time I came in, I realized quarantine had gotten so bad. Whenever I got a spoon out, and I found myself, I was in my living room watching TV, and I was eating corn out of a can with a spoon. That's how bad it is. I'm glad we're getting ready to open back up and get things going. Okay, number two. We need other people in our organization, even the ones who aggravate the far out of us. Here's what happens in any organization, whether it's nonprofit or whether it's state organizations or service orientations or whether it's a business. There's always these two people in every organization. One is a get your paperwork in, turn that paperwork in, get your email, get it done, turn that in. We need that thing. We can't get funding if we don't get that in. And that's what I call the type A snap person that says, we've got to get this paperwork in. And then there's always that real laid back person that always remembers everybody's birthday and always brings a cake and is always partying. And they're like, I turned my paperwork in, but I've been squeezing people. I've been hugging people. All that paperwork's in the back of my Impala because I've been just loving everybody. Love, not paperwork. Some of y'all want to have in your office a big sign. See, I should tell Chip and Joanna Gaines that they should do a big sign that says love, instead of saying love, not war, love, not paperwork. But here's the good news that both of y'all need to think about. Your type A person and your type J person. If y'all didn't have each other, you would not have a job. So even though this person aggravates the far out of you, and yes, I mean far, F-A-R, but really meaning F-I-R-E, they aggravate you, but you have to realize, whew, if I didn't have that person, this organization, if you did not have that person saying, get that paperwork in on Thursday, you wouldn't have funding to do all this hugging that you're doing and all this Impala business you're doing. But you paperwork, if you didn't have that person who was so busy hugging all these people, you wouldn't have a reason to get the funding because the funding was a people funded situation. So y'all need each other. Now, that doesn't mean you can't come to a meeting of the minds, but we'll talk about later how you do that without getting all gossipy at the water fountain. Ooh, that's a killer. Okay, so number two is we need people, even the ones who aggravate the far out of us. I'll tell you something I have a problem with online. I'm an English person. I love to write. I'm a writer. I love to place apostrophe. I love to spell, all of that. But you know what I get aggravated with? People that are like grammar snobs on Facebook. Like if you don't know the difference between your, and your, and I'm like, I'll just tell you this. I want to communicate with you whether you know the difference between those or not. If the way we communicated on social media was through algebra, every day you'd be saying Lisa Smart's an idiot. So we need to be more gracious with people who don't have certain skills that we do because we want to show them how smart we are. Don't be a grammar snob. Even if you know all the grammar rules, yay for you. I love a correctly placed apostrophe. And when you put your apostrophe in the wrong place, I notice it every time just because that's my thing. But I'm never going to say anything about it. Just like if I couldn't do an algebra problem, you're not going to say anything about that. We're all different. Okay, so that's number two. Number three, in working with people, stop replaying in your mind the things that people have said about you that aren't true. And you say, what does that have to do with working with people? Some of y'all are carrying a burden. You're carrying a weight. It's hard for you to be kind to Mr. Simpson because you're thinking about all the negative things that have been done to you, and you're going to have to get free of that. And I know because, oh, I had something really bad happen a few years ago. I got into it bad with somebody. Have y'all ever done that? I'll have to tell another story. I'm not a good person. I mean, I have done some things, and in this particular case, I didn't think I'd done anything bad. We weren't yelling, but we couldn't come to a meeting of the minds. So I thought I would do the mature person. I'd do the mature person thing. And so I asked to set up a time with this person, and we would have a mediator, and we would just have a big tent revival. By the end, we would have both just confessed everything, and I'm so sorry, and we're going to love each other and work together for the good. And I thought that's how it was going to be, because I even brought in a mediator so that we wouldn't wound each other. Well, it didn't go down like that. When she came in and we had our mediator, I said, I just want to own everything I have ever done to you. I shouldn't have said this. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have called you out on this. I mean, this is a very professional relationship. I don't want to have these negative things. When I did this, I was wrong. I'm so very sorry. I want us to come to a meeting of the minds. And so I just confessed everything I could think of. Have y'all ever been in a situation? I'm like, if I've ever stolen your Slurpee out of your office, I mean, anything, I'm guilty. I went to this meeting and I said, I'm guilty. And then I knew what she was going to do. She's going to confess to every time she drank my Slurpee, it's all going to be a big tent revival. That's what I was hoping. Well, she looked right at me, and in front of this mediator, looked right at me and said, okay, I forgive you. Yeah, that was my expression probably. What? I mean, I thought the devil was going to come out. And, I'm like 6 feet tall, and I could be an offensive lineman for the NFL. And I thought I was just going to come at her, But I was just sitting there like unable to believe it. So what did I do? Like a lot of y'all, I went home and all I could think about was, she is horrible. I even confessed to things that she did to me, thinking I could open it up a little bit, I mean, I just confessed to everything except wearing dirty underwear. I just couldn't think of anything else to confess. And then she literally couldn't come up with one thing to say she was sorry for. So you know what that began to do? It began to, as you'd say on a Friday night with your chicken, it marinated. It just marinated in my mind. And I would lay in bed and think, I can't believe she said this. I can't believe she did that. And boy, I began to form a spirit of bitterness. Have you ever been there? Ooh, I can't see you. Ooh, I have a little air pit. I mean, deodorant, because I'm nervous. I've been doing this for 20 years, but I'm always nervous, especially technology. Ooh, it really makes me nervous. Okay, so I got a spirit of bitterness, and I was just like, ugh. I'd think about her. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and I'd just think, and then some of y'all know I'd just be thinking, I just wanted to go like this. And then other times I wanted to cry because I must be terrible. And that's when I realized what we've all known, but it's hard to walk in it. Bitterness is like drinking poison, expecting the other person to fall over dead. See, I was drinking the poison of bitterness, and I thought she's going to be the one falling over dead. Well, she was going right on with her life. She was not caring. She did not care that Lisa Smartt confessed everything in the world to her. It mattered not to her. So I had to walk through a process. Maybe some of y'all are there. Maybe not in your professional life, maybe in your home life or your family life, where you're going to have to walk through the process. And it's hard, of saying, God, I did what I could do, and I'm going to have to stop thinking about this. I'm going to have to get free of it. And that's why I say principle number 3 is stop replaying the things people have said or done to you that aren't true. You just have to. Have you lost a promotion because somebody told something that wasn't true about you? Have you lacked confidence in a situation because you feel like that there was mayhem and you now are not sure whether you could say that or do that, and you're feeling like all under the weight? if you want to send me a personal message, we can talk about what I had to do to go through the process of getting free of bitterness, because bitterness will kill you, and it will give you a lack of confidence in what God's called you to do in your work. And so we have to walk free of bitterness. So stop replaying the things people have said that aren't true, and you may have to just put something else in your brain instead. Push play on some things that are true. The truth is, this woman did not control my life. So I had to remind myself that what she did or didn't do did not control my life. So that's number 3. Okay, number 4, assume the best when people communicate with you. In 2021, I'm going to put a sign out in front of my house that says, assume the best when people communicate with you. Philip and I spend most of our time with people in their 20s, and some of y'all might be in your 20s. And I'm not saying, I'm saying, you know how old people can be crotchety, salty, and mean-spirited sometimes? I'll own it. Sometimes y'all can be so easily offended. Not you probably, but sometimes your generation. So one of the big principles of working with people is assume the best when people communicate with you. What does that mean? It means that if you come in my office and say something and I think, well, I think she seemed a little snippy. I think, no, she loves you. She wasn't meaning anything by it. I get my feelings hurt very rarely. And somebody might say, well, I don't believe it. But that's because I just don't think about my feelings that much. And that's the answer. You won't hear it in 2021. Because people will say, no, 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 you need to think about yourself more. You need to think about your feelings more. Now, if you're being abused or you're in a difficult situation and you need to get some help for yourself, absolutely you do. But as a whole, most of us need to think about our feelings a little bit less, and we need to think about other people's feelings. And then, like my parents, we'll go to bed every night and sleep pretty good, because my parents thought that life was about serving others, about giving to others, about being about others. They didn't get their feelings hurt much because they were busy serving. And that's what I know a lot of y'all are doing. Assume the best when people communicate with you. Have you ever worked with somebody that everything you said to them is like, I'm like, hey, can you make 5 copies of this? Yeah, why? You don't think I know how to make copies? It's like, no, I knew you knew how to make copies. I was just asking if you could make 5 copies. We should not have to tiptoe on stuff like that. So that means if you're the one that's running your organization or your office, you need to have a training on, when I just ask you a question, it's just a question. I don't mean anything. There's no underlying meaning to when I say, can you make 5 copies? I'm just asking if you can, and then you will. I'm not underlying anything. I love you. I think it's good in an organization to say, I love every one of you. So when I speak to you, I'm just speaking plainly. And I want you to just receive it plainly. And I don't want you to get your feelings hurt. And that means not every Facebook post is about you. And we have to avoid inflammatory bubble language where it's like, everybody's after me. Everybody wants to do something that's going to hurt my. No, you know what? People don't think enough about Lisa Smartt to want to hurt Lisa Smartt's feelings all the time. They're not thinking enough about me to want to hurt me. So whenever you communicate and say, hey, you need to do this different, you need to do this better, I'm just going to receive that the way it is. So if one of y'all want to make a negative, nasty comment, now if you make a nasty comment, I'm probably not going to listen to it. But if you make a constructive comment, it'll be helpful. Okay, so number 4, assume the best when people communicate with you. We're going to leave some time at the end to have some Q&A. I've always wanted to do that. We don't get to do that. Like when I'm on a stage somewhere and it's a big conference, you don't sometimes get to have Q&A. But with me having all these books behind me, you know, this is the kind of conference where you're going to have Q&A. Now, I'm not going to know the answers to any of them probably, but it'll be fun to pretend. Okay. And we're only going to go halfway because in July, we're going to do the last half of this. And we'll just go, oh, let's see. Yeah, maybe 1 or 2 more. Okay. Number 5, all of your effort in working with people may lead to a less than ideal result, but expend the effort anyway. My mom and daddy were teachers. My mama was a social worker for a long period of time. And then for many years, they ran a children's home in Texas. And so they've always been in the people service oriented business. And the problem with the people business, as y'all know, at the end of the day, a lot of times it looks like failure. You know, if I'm an accountant, at the end of the day, I can add it all up. And if it added up correctly, it was a successful day. But in the people business, it's not like that, is it? At the end of the day, you might have put in a 10, 11-hour day. At the end of the day, it sometimes still looks messy and undone. Every Christmas, my mom and daddy would get a call, usually from somebody, either who had grown up in the children's home or been one of their students, and would call from prison. You know how on Christmas Day they get a call to call a family member, and because my mom and daddy were family to so many people, they'd almost always get a call. And somebody might say, man, all the years you invested in Jim, and yet there he is, you know, in prison. Does that make you feel like you wasted your time with them? Well, I want to encourage you with what my mom and daddy always thought. Anything you've done for another human being is not wasted time, no matter what the result is. If there was an older person and you helped them for many years and you did this, and then in the end something happened, they didn't end up responding correctly, or they had a problem, or you came along, some young worker, and you tried to help them and it didn't turn out well, or they made bad choices, that time was still well spent. Because in the people business, we don't have a ledger at the end of the day where we can see what worked and what didn't. In the people business, you're going to have to be okay with some strings still not being tied. You know what I'm saying? So I want to encourage you. All your effort may lead to what looks like a less than ideal result, but expend the effort anyway. Most people will disappoint you, but help them anyway. Isn't that good? Ooh, most people will disappoint you, but help them anyway. I'm going to end this section with a story, and I wish I were standing up because the story is better when you're standing up. A storyteller who's sitting in a college professor's office with a bunch of books behind her, it doesn't do as good. But I'm going to tell this story. This will be our ending story, and then we'll have Q&A. I told you I was in a car wreck. Well, I didn't tell you all the details of this car wreck. And not that you asked, because I can't tell if you're asking, but I do want to tell you the details. I was driving on a little country road. Some of y'all live in rural areas and you know what I'm talking about. A country road that's like this big, you know. And Tennessee is the worst. We lived in Texas most of my life, and in Tennessee, sometimes out here, the country roads, man, there's just no shoulder at all. You better be a good driver, you know, which evidently I'm not. But anyway, I was driving down this little country road out in the middle of nowhere, and I was driving a sweet ride, sweet car. How many of y'all? Philip and I always say we were Dave Ramsey before Dave Ramsey was cool. You know what I'm saying? We were always good with the money. We lived below the poverty level for many years, but we never had any kind of financial problem because we just lived like our great-grandparents lived, and we didn't buy anything. I remember one time for a year, we didn't buy a pack of gum. We didn't have any money. But anyway, and so we still live like that. It's funny. But anyway, I was driving a sweet ride. What was it, honey? What year was it? 80.
What, the
The
car?
car, yeah, the Crown Vic.
I think it was a 90.
Yeah, 1990 Crown Vic. Yeah, that's what it was. It's been a while since I've told the story. A 1990 Crown Victoria. Some of y'all had a meemaw who had that car. Y'all remember your meemaw? That's why she'd always say, I could take 14 kids to Bible school. I'd just come by with the Crown Vic and we just fill up the back. I mean, that is a mammoth car. And I was driving this 1990 Crown Vic. And yes, I'm gonna answer your next question. Red velour interior. Woo! It was sweet. White Crown Vic, red velour interior. I was driving down a country road. I thought I was getting off to the right a little bit. I felt like I was kind of sliding off. And so I did what I had heard my whole life be described as I overcorrected. I thought I was getting the Crown Vic back on the road, but instead I was hurling it into a grove of trees across the road, as I told the sheriff's department later, at a very moderate rate of speed. Probably like 70 miles an hour. Because on country roads, you don't even have speed limits out there. So I crashed into this grove of trees, and that Crown Vic was on my lap, and it was smashed. There was only 2 places somebody could have lived in that car that day. The exact 2 places where me and my son were. He was right behind me. So the Crown Vic was up on my lap, and I asked my son, I said, he asked me, he said, Mama, can you get out? I said, oh no, this car is on me. I can't get out. He said, I can crawl out the window and I'll go up to the road and get help. And this is when you're glad you live in a little country area, because he had a gash on his head. He was bleeding. Nobody in a country area is going to pass a bleeding 12-year-old and say, I don't know, Harold, keep driving. This makes me nervous. Nobody was scared. So he was up at the road going to get help. And while he was there, that's when I had a realization. Ooh, it was bad, bad, bad. And I know what some of y'all are thinking. You're thinking, ooh, Miss Lisa, you had a wreck and you didn't have on clean underwear. Your granny always said you better wear your clean underwear, and you didn't have on clean underwear. That was not the problem. Others of you are saying, I know what it was. You're going to go to the hospital and you hadn't shaved your legs. You're going to the ER and you hadn't even shaved your legs. No, that was not the problem. Let me tell you, when a big woman has a Crown Vic on her lap, and she has had a terrible wreck and the EMTs are on their way, there is something worse than not having shaved your legs or having on raggedy underwear. And that is this: no underwear at all. If I'm lying, I'm dying. Big woman got a Crown Vic on her lap wearing no panties. And I'd seen enough of the ER to know that sometimes when they extricate you from the vehicle, they have to remove items of clothing. And by this time, my son came back and he said, Mama, everybody's stopping. Because what is there to do in Palmersville, Tennessee, except to watch the EMTs cut a big woman out of a Crown Vic? We don't even have a movie theater out there. There's no movie theater. There's hardly a convenience store. So when everybody heard that big thud up against the trees, well, of course, they started making a big prayer circle around that Crown Vic out there in the middle of nowhere. And that's when I realized that old man in the overalls, if they had to cut my clothes off of me, he wasn't going to live. You know what I'm saying? He was going to just flat out die of heart failure, good or bad. I don't even know what to assess. But I remember I prayed. I said, Lord, please, whatever you do, keep my stretch pants on. Because now some of y'all are wondering why I didn't have on underwear. Now, it's none of your business. It's none of your business. Your mama told you not to ask, but I'm an open book, as you have learned. And so I'll tell you why. I had had a girl surgery, and I had learned that the best thing to do to air out that big old scar that has incidentally eliminated my possibility of a Victoria's Secret career, that big scar, the best thing to make it heal was to let a little air blowing down in that area. And so I went to the Family Dollar and I got some big stretch pants in all different colors. And I was just trying to be medically suave. But the problem is I had not thought about the fact that I could be in a car wreck, and that, in fact, sometimes I got proud. I'd be at the grocery store and I'd be standing there thinking, I ain't got on underwear, and pride comes before a fall, as was evidenced on this day. So the EMTs got there and they were able to pull me out of that wreckage and got me. I mean, you couldn't believe what they can do. EMTs should make 6 figures. It's unreal what they did. They were able to get me out of that car, get me in the car. They had get me in the ambulance. They had bandaged up my son. My leg was crushed. I mean, crushed. But I knew we were all going to live. I was going to live. My son was going to live. And in the ambulance, that little sweet young EMT came up to me and said, with scissors, Miss Lisa, I hope these pants aren't important to you. I said, you have no idea. My grandmother brought these pants over on the boat and made me promise to never violate them. Of course, I know he was looking and thinking, they look like they came from the clearance rack at the Family Dollar. But, okay, to fast forward, that's when I made him raise his right hand. and promised that he would never, ever tell what was getting ready to happen. Now, some of you are wondering, what was the moral to this story? If I'm actually getting educational credit for this, I'd like to know why this big woman with books behind her told me that she was in a car wreck, not wearing underwear. Well, I'll tell you what the moral is. There is a little young EMT in our area who will never get married. See, that's when y'all are supposed to laugh, and I have to laugh for you. That is not the moral to the story. I'm going to end my presentation today with the actual moral to the story. Here's the moral to the story. I did something stupid on a country road and ended up in a grove of trees. When the EMTs got there, here's what they did not ask me. They did not say, Miss Lisa, were you drinking? Have you been drinking? Miss Lisa, are you on some kind of drugs? Is that why you hit these trees? Because we're going to evaluate whether we're going to get you out of there based on whether or not you did something stupid. You know what they didn't even ask? They didn't even say, Miss Lisa, did somebody run you off the road? I mean, how could somebody who hasn't been drinking and isn't on drugs be in a grove of trees with this much of a problem? Did somebody run you off the road, or are you just so visually impaired that you couldn't keep your car on the road? You know what? They didn't ask any of those questions. Do you know why they didn't? Because their job that day was, no matter the circumstance, their job was to get me out of that ditch and rescue me. That was their job. And they did it well. And whether or not somebody had run me into that ditch with all those trees, or whether I had done it myself, they didn't really care, because their job was to help me, to come alongside me, to help mend the wounds that incidentally I had committed myself with my own error. Every day, if you're in the people business, you're going to be called to get in some ditches, and you're going to be called to go into some situations. And there's going to be times you're going to be tempted to say, really? You got yourself into this situation again? You did that again? But I want to encourage you to have the philosophy of the great EMTs that day. I am here to help. I'm here to be a blessing and an encouragement. In fact, it's funny, there was even an old man there before the EMTs got there, and he said, ma'am, if this car catches on fire, I want you to know I'm going to be able to get you out of there. He weighed about 100 pounds soaking wet. I thought, Lord, please help this not catch on fire. But I knew what he meant was he didn't care that it was my fault. He was going to be there to help me. Every day, that's what your all's job is. And sometimes it's a real pain in the butt, and other times it's a real blessing. But I want to encourage you. So I'm going to go back over real quick what we went through so far today, and then we're going to finish up in July. Number one, if you think you're better than others, that's a sure sign you're not. That's why we never say, how could anybody? Because we could be there, right there with them. Number two, we need other people, even the ones who drive us crazy. We're not going to be a snob about the thing we're good at and the thing they're not good at. We're going to be glad they're there. Number three. Oh, what was number? Oh, stop replaying the things people have said about you that aren't true. Whew, if you need to message me personally, I'll give my information at the end. You can message me, and we'll have a little non-therapeutic therapy session, because I have no qualifications to give you any kind of therapy. But if you want to just talk to a Meemaw person, you can message me, and I'll talk about how I walked through that if you're in the middle of that. Stop replaying things people have said about you that aren't true. Number four, assume the best when people communicate with you. All your effort may lead to a less than ideal result, but go ahead and give it that effort anyway. And most people will disappoint. Oh, that's it. Yay. Then we'll finish up next time. We're going to have a little Q&A. While we're waiting on that, I can sing the Visiting Angels song again. Visiting angels, quality choice in home care. I always wanted to be a singer. Okay, do we have questions?
Not so far.
Oh, y'all click in something and ask a question, or if you don't, that's okay. Just if you don't have a question. Oh, wait, let me tell you real quick. How do you contact me? how do you see the books that I was not a self-promoter and put behind me? All of that can be found on lisasmart.com. And there's even links where if you want to order the Kindle book or you want to order a paperback, all of those books. I have funny fiction books and I have column books, and all of those books and a way to message me, all of that is on lisasmart.com. Now you've got to put 2 T's in smart, because we weren't smart enough to actually spell our name like smart. It's LISA at LISASMARTT.com. Yes.
I'm still not getting anything. I do have Susan Catco just made the comment. Thank you, Lisa. You have been a real encouragement.
Oh, thank you. Good. Yay.
Angela Foster has written, good information, Lisa. Just this presentation has allowed some self-reflection for me.
Oh, well, that's good. We don't have to have a Lisa Smart show here at the end. Don't worry about it. If it's just that, if it's a question, you can ask it. But if it's like, you know, if it's just, I mean, I don't want my mama to have to come from heaven and snatch on me or, you know, anything.
I'm still not seeing anything else, Lisa.
Okay, thank y'all.
Okay, thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed your presentation. I especially love your story about the car wreck. I'm glad that you're okay. And, you know, the lesson that you said to us, that we're here to serve, we're here to help. I think that's so important for all of us, because many of us work in a helping environment, and that's just, you know, so important for us. And I can't wait to hear part 2 in July. So thank you so much, Lisa. I'd like to thank everybody for their participation. We actually had 78 people who registered for this series. Would like to thank Teresa for organizing our series, and Dale for all of his technical support. You will receive a brief survey after the webinar, so everybody please complete it. And thank you again for your participation, and thank you, Lisa. And I hope everybody has a great rest of the day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.